36 days late to this party, let's do this. What is up everybody, it is Miranda, welcome back to the weekly Fangirl. So I have been sitting with my thoughts on this movie since January. I took longer than I should have to see it. By that point, people were talking about it. Jenny Nicholson had already made her video about it. Some of my friends had gone to see it. I'm on Tumblr, so obviously I got spoiled on some things. Normally I don't care about stuff like that, but with this, it was kind of important that I didn't know going in. But I still went and saw it. I took notes on it at the time because it was a lot and I kind of needed to vent my thoughts. Then I went and saw it again, and then more time went on. We got further and further away from the release date. Obviously the world outside turns into a giant raging dumpster fire. Things like Star Wars become a little less important. But then Disney Plus decided to drop it on their service today, so it's timely again. Let's talk about it. I do have like a little bit of a bullet point list. Full disclosure, I wrote this back in January, so some of this is from my first viewing, some of it is from my second viewing. None of it is in a lot of detail, but we'll explore as we move down the list. So let's just start from the top and work our way down. First bullet, we have a question. When and how did Hux start spying for the rebellion? Already we're off to a strong start. I don't understand Hux in this movie at all. He and Kylo Ren have had this mutual hatred for each other for 2 movies, and it doesn't come to a head in any meaningful way. Hux just betrays his cause that he's devoted apparently his entire life to. He spies for the rebellion? That makes no sense! We are 1 bullet point in. Strap in, guys, this is gonna be fun. Why couldn't Rey and Rose have even one scene together? Like one. Like even one. Poe having been a spice runner once is a cool attribute that has exactly 0 to do with the plot. It was true then and it's true now. And by the way, I have since found out being a spice runner is essentially code for being a drug dealer, which... no, that's not a thing. He flew for the Republic. Okay, what? Did he fly for the Republic and then he found out the Republic was bullshit and then he took like a gap year where he just dealt space drugs? Was he the guy in the bar selling people death sticks for a while there? Is that, are you honestly telling me that's a thing he did? Come on. By the way, you're gonna make your one named character who is played by a Latino man a drug dealer in a past life? Are you trying to be racist? Did this happen by accident? What the fuck is going on? And honestly, I don't know what's more insulting, that it was deliberate or that it wasn't. Like, it didn't even cross their mind that, oh yeah, we're gonna have Oscar play a racist stereotype. In space, Rey being a Palpatine is weird. Again, keep in mind, I wrote this before things came out after the movie explaining things. Did Palpatine create his son? Ew. With the Force a la Anakin, like the Dark Plagueis thing, like, is it kind of like an immaculate Sithception thing? Or does this mean Palpatine fucks? Well, apparently neither. Apparently it's cloning, but like, it's still gross. Still gross and weird and ew. Okay, honest question. All those Sith people that Palpatine just had on Exegol, where the hell did they come from? Like, the war was fought and won by the light, like, 40 years ago, and somehow all of these Sith acolytes are still just hanging around. Where do they all come from? By the way, you've probably gathered by now, but the order for some of these is gonna be a little weird. Speaking of that, Rey's new saber is cool. That's it. I just think it's cool. All the Jedi talking to Rey in the throne room, that was also cool. I will say, when I was watching this movie for the first time, and I heard Anakin, and I heard Mace, and I heard Obi-Wan, and Yoda, and everybody, like, in the background, I honestly, like, I almost started crying for a second. Like, it did. You know what? J.J. Abrams, fine. It took the entire length of the movie, but you finally made me feel something. Good job. But on the flip side to that, why did absolutely none of those Jedi talk to Ben? At all. Like, he just got shoved down into a pit, and honestly, that could have been a good bit of visual storytelling. Like, he's fallen from the light. It took him 2 movies and some change to get to where he is now, at the bottom of seemingly an endless chasm on a Sith death world. You could have shown him, like, the scene in The Dark Knight Rises where he's climbing out of the Lazarus pit. You could have shown him making that climb while meanwhile he can feel Rey in the throne room fighting against Palpatine. Suddenly, you hear like a whisper, and it's Anakin, and he's calling to his grandson, who he has a lot of cinematic parallels with. Like, their stories are very similar at this point. Do what I couldn't. Finish what I started. Go to her. End this for all of us. You can do it. Like, that's his blood. That's his family. But he didn't. None of them did. Leia and Luke didn't talk to him this entire movie. Like, it's just... I'm sorry, no, they did. Leia did, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, none of the Jedi that came before talked to Ben, and it's a crime. His own family did not talk to him hardly at all in this movie, and it's a crime. Okay, so the Knights of Ren. So these are the Knights of Ren. Cool. Glad we finally got to see them just long enough to watch them all die. Hi guys! Bye guys! How in the hell was Hux the spy? So the other defected stormtroopers interacting with Finn would have been cool to see. It's too bad that didn't really happen. So did that girl with the sick horse thing even get a name? Because I don't think she did. Okay, Chewie finally got the Medal of Yavin. Cool. And it only took Leia dying first for it to happen. Seriously, guys, what the hell? Oh, hi, Han. Okay, so I won't lie, it wasn't just the Jedi in the throne room scene. Ben making peace with his daddy finally, you know, that got me a little bit. And it only took Leia dying first for— Okay, the return of Red 5 was cool, fine. Rose Tico should have been in more of this movie. I know I'm not the first one to say it, and I certainly won't be the last, but she should have been in more of this movie. Okay, so was 3PO just reset to get that trailer shot? Because I think he was, and frankly, that's stupid. Poe having a crisis of faith in the middle of the aerial battle with the Emperor's fleet is fine. Got insurmountable odds facing them, and it's a lot, and he's scared, and Leia's dead, and he's in charge, and, you know, in the last movie, that whole bomber pilot thing, like, went spectacularly wrong, and he ended up inadvertently killing a lot of people, so him having a crisis of faith is fine. Him talking to Leia's actual corpse during his crisis of faith on the base, though? I don't know if I like that. It's kind of dark. It's kind of weird. They didn't even try to bury her, did they? You guys aren't on Hoth. The ground isn't frozen or anything, so what the fuck are you doing? It's really fucked up and wrong and weird, and I don't like it. And honestly, on that point, even without Carrie, I feel like there were so many different ways they could have handled her character and kept her alive. If only to keep the memory of Carrie alive, as opposed to watching the on-screen character she portrayed die in a really contrived and stupid way, I might add. Like, it's bad enough that we lost her in real life, and then you had to do Leia that dirty? Like, are you fucking kidding me? Moving on. So, we're having a young Luke flashback. And I guess Sebastian Stan was just busy that day. Like, it's bad enough, the CGI fuckery going on with Carrie's ghost. You had to rope young Mark into this too. Like, he's made like, this man, online at least, is like an honorary member of his family on Twitter now. Like, the resemblance is uncanny, you guys. Did you even think to call him? The opportunity was right there. On a lighter note, I like co-generals. I like Poe and Finn running the rebellion as co-generals. I don't like how we got here, but I think it's okay. Poe was ready to dive bomb to save Finn, and the only reason he didn't is because Lando and Chewie got there first. This I like. All of the lingering touches between Poe and Finn, I like this also. Poe is jealous of Rey. I was wondering through the whole movie why it is that Poe seemed so salty every time Finn and Rey were even within spitting distance of each other. He's jealous. I'm accepting this as canon. You can take it or leave it, but this is what I think is going on. Poe thinks that Finn likes Rey as more than a friend, so then he goes running back to his ex to try and make Finn jealous. Poe, no! But like, that's why Poe is flirting with Zori, right? I mean, okay, obviously she still has feelings for him too. That's why she gives him that little captain's medallion thing, which, by the way, can we talk about how long it must have taken her to track that down in the first place? Like, how much work did she put in? How much time did it take her to get that? And then at the drop of a hat, Poe drags his ass back to her planet and starts making moony eyes at her to try and make his boyfriend jealous, and she gives up her get out of jail free card? Girl, what are you doing? What? Her function in this movie is essentially to just be there when Poe needs a thing, then make a quippy line in the middle of a climactic fight later, and then disappear again, never to be seen or heard from. Oh, I'm sorry. And also to make sure that we all know as the audience that Poe is not gay for Finn. And I guess in this movie, Rey functions as making us 100% clear on the fact that Finn is not gay for Poe. This fixation on Rey's parentage, nobody gives a shit anymore. Literally nobody cares. Can we please just let that shit go? Also, why the hell did she go back to Tatooine and not back to Jakku? Like, if she was gonna go anywhere at the end of this movie, why did she go to the one place where, I'm assuming she's never even been, like, has she ever even been to Tatooine before? She's closing Luke's loop when his story arc ended in the last movie. Like, why are you opening it back up again so that she can close it? Like, it makes we've seen this story before, and it's called The Last Jedi. Why is she going to Tatooine and not Jakku? So she was gonna go to a sad desert planet to get some closure. Why not go back to the planet that she was trying to get back to in The Force Awakens? It all comes full circle, and she closes her own loop, her own character arc, not somebody else's who's already dead. That being said, Force Ghost Luke is pretty cool. Force Ghost Leia, on the other hand, we're gonna show Luke and Leia's Force Ghosts, but not Ben's? Whatever. Sure, why not? Because that makes perfect sense! Okay, I brought up Hux earlier. Really want to get into it now because this has been bugging me for 4 months. So, Hux dies. Hux dies betraying the First Order. Hux dies betraying the First Order, not for like personal gain, not for power, but purely to undermine Kylo Ren's authority. Not to gain any authority of his own, not to like get one over on him and like be the new leader of the First Order of the Empire, essentially. Not for that. Literally, he says, I don't care if the light side wins. If you people win, I just need Kylo Ren to lose. Okay, Hux is the pettiest of petty bitches, so I get that. To a point. So fine, so that's his motivation. But if he is going to go to that length to betray his own side of the war, and he's gonna die for it, Ben should have been the one to kill him. I'm sorry, Kylo Ren should have been the one to kill him. We could have had an epic fight between these two. The culmination of 3 films now, 3 films worth of mutual hatred and distrust and like loathing and backstabbing. We could have had this like no holds barred fucking knockdown, drag out fight between these two. But no, what we get instead is this guy, General Pride, who, by the way, can we talk about him for a second? I'll get back to the other thing in a minute. General Pride, I thought, like, they spent so much time framing this guy across from Hux and, like, giving him screen time, arguably more screen time than Rose Tico, I might add. They gave him so much screen time that I thought, I'm like, is he an actor? Like, he was in the original trilogy? Is this, like, a cameo? Or are they, like, shouting? Is he important? Because I've never heard of this character. No. Turns out the only reason he's here is that he's a red herring so that we don't immediately know that Hux is the spy, which is dumb. And then to shoot Hux like a chump the minute he's found out to be a spy. And then he dies like in a terrible explosion or something later in the movie, so his part is essentially, he's literally just Hux's stand-in after Hux dies in a stupid way for a stupid reason like a chump. And it could have been so much better. Like, I already, in my head, I was thinking about it. Like, okay, we get into that brawl with him and Ren. They're going at it. And for a second, maybe Hux gets the upper hand. In this hypothetical, Ren has not been using force chokes or like force throws even, or maybe only sparingly, but he wants to enjoy this. He wants to tear down his rival and like really savor ending him in a satisfying way. So he's mostly just using the lightsaber and Hux is using like the blaster and he'll beat him with his own fists, right? And he'll show that like even if he doesn't have force powers, he can still one-up this fucking Sith Lord. Fuck the force anyway. I'm part of the First Order. I'm General Hux. There's a point in the fight where the balance shifts for like a second and Hux has the upper hand and like he's got Ren on the ground, his lightsaber maybe flew across the room or something and it's like on the floor. Kylo's got the wind knocked out of him for a second, he looks up and for a second like Hux is staring down at him like down his nose like the bastard he is. He's looking down at him, he's like, the Supreme Leader is dead. Like echoing back to that part in the throne room at the end of The Last Jedi after Snoke is like in half, in pieces on the floor. He looks at Snoke and he's like, the Supreme Leader is dead. So he looks at Ren and he makes that callback, right? And he levels his blaster at him, ready to shoot him between his fucking eyes. And now Kylo's like, okay, I'm not gonna die this way. This is where I use the Force. And instead of Force choking him, or even getting his lightsaber, what does he do instead? He uses the Force to rip that blaster out of Hux's fucking hand, and quicker than he can even process what's happening, take it and shoot him between his fucking eyes, and he slowly sits up as Hux falls back onto the ground. Long live the Supreme Leader. Fucking hire me, Lucasfilm. You're welcome. You can have that one for free. But instead, no, this guy that we don't know and don't care about comes in, kills an established main character in the stupidest way possible, and then Hux is just dead, and we just move on and nothing matters anymore. It's like they were trying to warn us about quarantine. Nothing's gonna matter in a couple months anyway, guys. Get used to it. Star Wars is ruined now, too. Like, I think you guys get it now, but I can't even begin to describe how much this still bugs me. Just the fact that you took these cool characters that had like genuine emotions between them and you just threw them both away. Okay, so going back to Leia's death for a second though, so Leia dies. She dies clutching the medal of Yavin. They cover her over with a sheet. Goodbye, dear princess, all of that. And then Poe and Finn and Chewie, they all get back. Poe finds out that Leia's dead. It's like in the middle of like, I've gotta talk to her, you know, it's important. Like that fucking, the dumbest death revelation trope put to film. I hate that trope so much. It's so dumb, but like if you're gonna use it, don't use it here. Don't use it here when Princess Leia has just fucking died. Like, come on. So they do that. They do that fucking by the numbers shit. And then Chewie finds out that Leia is dead. Now Chewie has known Leia for 40 years. They're family. They might as well be family. And he finds out that she is dead. They cut back to a wide shot and they show Chewie pounding the ground like an angry gorilla and screaming instead of what they should have done, which is zoom in tight on his expression, because that is premium zoom in tight shot emotional reaction material. You have these friends who've known each other for 4 decades and one of them finds out the other's dead and you cut away from the reaction? Was the editor drunk or the cameraman? Like, who came up with that? Who? Was it JJ's idea? Was it the studio's idea? Like, who is responsible for this? Exegol is a stupid name for a planet. There, I said it. So I've already mentioned this once, but Finn Poe didn't happen. And honestly, I am neither surprised nor am I shocked. I'm just tired and angry and disappointed. Oscar was ready to do it, John was ready to do it, but instead everybody's gotta be straight, right? Because God for fucking bid anybody else exist in the Star Wars universe but the heteros. Actually, no, I take that back. There was that token lesbian kiss at the very end of the movie. Like, the scene before the fucking Tatooine scene that we won't even talk about anymore because I don't want to talk about it. So we have these two lesbians share a yay, neither of us died kiss at the end of the climactic battle. We don't know these characters. They're literally here for token representation so that Disney can say that they did their due diligence when really, no, you didn't. You actually actively undermined the representation you could have had and pissed off every fan of yours that isn't straight. Well fucking done. Well done. Not bitter or anything. And, you know, meanwhile, yeah, Reylo did happen just in time for Ben to die, and honestly, at that rate, what is even the point? They kiss and then he dies. His sacrifice and his life and ultimately his love for Rey, none of that fucking matters because he's just dead now. Cool, glad we got that and not the thing we wanted. So Dio was cute. Dio, the little droid that hangs out with BB-8 for a second on Ochi's ship, he's cute and functionally useless. He's there to narrate the emotions we should be feeling in the scene and sell toys, and that's about it. Like, he literally at one point says, like, I think it's after 3PO dies, or is reset rather, I think he says that the scene is sad. Like, yeah, Dio, we should have been able to glean that without you having to tell us, but the writing in this movie is so lazy that they wrote in a droid to tell us what we should feel instead of conveying that so that we would feel it organically. Also, why in the hell, on a separate note, was everything so rushed? This movie was 2.5 hours long and it felt like an hour, maybe. Like, it ended and I was like, wow, that fucking flew by. It's almost like they didn't spend any meaningful amount of time on any one plot point because we gotta wrap this shit up. It's the last movie in the trilogy, right? 2.5 hours. Crammed all of that into 2.5, like, it's the last movie in a trilogy. We could have at least gotten 3 hours and maybe spent any amount of time on any of these points you were trying to explore. No? Couldn't have gotten like another half hour on that? It's the last movie in the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. Like, you have millions of people around the world who would have made the time to sit there for the extra half hour. I'm just throwing it out there. And that was all of the thoughts from my first viewing of this movie. Moving on to when I saw it the second time in theaters, here we go. So Janna. Her name was mentioned. Her name was Janna, the other defective stormtrooper who, honestly, I swear to God I forgot her name because they spent so little time on her the first time, but the second time I watched it I'm like, okay, yeah, her name's Janna, cool. Half the problems in this movie, like every other movie, could be solved with better communication. Finn, Poe, guys. Second time that Rey has had to deal with a water situation on a foreign planet and she gets through it without a problem. Didn't make sense in The Last Jedi either. Like, she was raised in the barren deserts of Jakku where there's never water. So she doesn't know how to swim, right? She doesn't have any experience with like seas. But then in The Last Jedi, she's on the little island with Luke. She ends up going into that force hole, having that dark side vision or whatever, and then she's just in a pit of water. She 100% should have drowned in that scenario. She didn't, but she should have. have. And then, in this movie, she's in the middle of the ocean, on the wreckage of the Death Star, fighting Ben, which again, we will get to that fight in a minute, but she's fighting Ben and the sea is like going back and forth and like slapping them both with water and like it's a big climactic thing. She sails! She takes a little like water skimmer to get to the Death Star wreckage in the first place. Since when does Rey know how to sail? Like I know, okay, she's very, very good with vehicles. She's an experienced pilot. She taught herself, which is really cool. You know, so I get that she knows how to fly. Since when does she know how to sail and since when does she know how to swim? It doesn't make any sense. It didn't in the last movie and it doesn't in this one. Rey should have drowned like 5 different times in this series and no one has pointed it out and it's been bugging me for years. Okay, so Dark Rey. Dark Rey was badass. Dark Rey looked so cool. Dark Rey was hot as hell and we got her for approximately 2 seconds and then she disappeared forever. We couldn't have explored that for even a second longer. Like with everything else, we just gotta have it for a second so we see that she has conflict and then it's just gone. So there's the fight on the Death Star wreckage, right? What I want to talk about is how in the hell Kylo managed to get onto the Death Star without Rey noticing. I get that she was really wrapped up with like finding the Wayfinder, then she had that sudden dark side force vision of herself as Dark Rey, and it was so cool. So like I get why she might be a little distracted, but like I saw that scene the first and the second time and like I honestly thought for a second that it was like their force connection again because he's just suddenly there. Then we go outside to where they're like having their lightsaber duel and you see his ship, so you're telling me he flew here. Suspending disbelief for a second, he uses his force connection to find out where she is, finds out where she is, he goes. But so Kylo is just here and they're fighting. And then, as if things couldn't get any worse, then they get to this point in the fight where Leia force connects with her son, just in time for Rey to murder homeboy with his own lightsaber, while his dying mother watches. His mother, your Jedi Master, Rey. And meanwhile, let's bear in mind that Kylo hasn't actually been trying to kill her this whole fight. Like, he's been trying to incapacitate her, maybe even slow her down. I think, yeah, at this point he destroyed the Wayfinder, so like, the only way they get to Exegol is together. So he's like trying to like, bring her over to the dark side still. He's still trying to make her join him, get her to see reason, so to speak. But he's not trying to kill her, he's barely trying to fight her. And she just straight up murders him. And then Leia dies. That's horrible, and it's never brought up again after the fact. She heals him, then she steals his ship and leaves. She just leaves her friends. Like, they were in the middle of a mission and it was kind of important, but she just leaves them there, takes his ship and his Wayfinder, and fucking dips out to Exegol. And by the way, how does he get off the Death Star? How does... After she heals Ben, and after he then makes peace with his daddy's ghost, and then is just stood there on the Death Star, and I'm assuming he must have had a point where he's just kind of staring out at the raging sea like, she took my ship. I get how Finn probably got off of there because Janna knows how to actually sail those ships, those little skimmers, so she and Finn probably got back on their skimmer and got out of there. They didn't give Kylo a ride, so how does he leave? Like, he's just she stranded him. She stranded him on the Death Star, and yet somehow, a couple scenes later, we will see him back on Exegol, and it makes exactly 0 sense. How did this happen? And this is, by the way, like, he doesn't go back to the First Order and get a new ship, I don't think, does he? And he doesn't get his own ship back from Rey because she flies to Ahch-To. I'm sorry, she doesn't go to Exegol. She flies to Ahch-To, and then she lights his ship on fire. She's like throwing stuff, like throwing wood and debris at the wreckage, like in a fit of rage and pain. And then, oh my god, this is actually one part that I really kind of liked. She pulls out Luke's lightsaber, which I'm pretty sure this was Anakin's lightsaber before. It is the blue one, right? She pulls it out, she stares at it for a second, and then she looks at the fire, and she just, like, with no hesitation, she goes to torch her master's saber and his father's saber before him, and Luke's Force Ghost just grabs it midair, like, bitch, I think the fuck not. No. What we're not gonna do is we're not gonna torch my family heirloom today. Thank you very much. That moment was cool. Luke's hand just shooting out with the Force and just being like, nah! That was cool. That part was funny. Mostly because of Mark's face. He's just like, what are you doing? Like, he's mildly amused by it. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, so how the fuck did Kylo get off the Death Star? Reasons! I don't fucking know, and neither do you. Oh, but on the subject of Rey almost killing Kylo, can we go back to the fact that Finn was on the Death Star when that happened? And she had just like thrown him like a good ways with the Force, like she's like angry and in the middle of the fight and he's screaming at her because that's all they let him do in this movie, and she turns around, she's like, ah! Like lands in the spray, and like Janna kind of catches him and cradles him a little bit, and then Rey stabs Kylo. Did Finn see that? Did he see her do that? Like, are we seriously not gonna talk about how Rey just straight up murdered a dude for a hot second there? Are we really? One of her friends potentially saw her do that and it's just never brought up again? Really? This is what we're doing? This is the epic conclusion? Come on. Okay, upon second viewing, Poe talking to Leia's corpse was still weird. Still weird and wrong and bad, and I don't like it. Okay. So we don't know how Kylo gets off the Death Star. We do know how Rey gets off of Ahch-To, however the hell you say the name of that island. She takes Luke's ship, right? She takes Red 5. Luke is finally able to lift it up out of the water, the thing he wasn't able to do when he was being trained by Yoda. Not that actually completely flew over my head the first and second time I watched this movie. I found that out through a Denny Nicholson video after the fact, because I wasn't even thinking of that, because this wasn't Luke's movie. That was the last movie. So I wasn't thinking about Luke in this moment. I was thinking about, oh, okay, cool. Like, we see the ship, Rey gets to fly off in like a junker ship, cool. Here's the problem I have with that. That ship has been waterlogged at the bottom of the ocean for years. Like, we don't know how long Luke has been on this island, but we can infer that it's been quite a while. Like, okay, just imagine with me, if you will, for a second. Somebody drives their car off a bridge, right, into a lake, and it sits at the bottom of that lake for years, right? Imagine trying to drive that after like a couple hours of working on it. It's never gonna happen, right? There's like water in the gas tank and like everything's rusted and like maybe there's sea creatures living in it now for all we know. Apply that logic to a spaceship. It makes even less sense there. It's been sitting at the bottom of the ocean for God only knows how long, but all of a sudden, later that very same day, Rey is flying it to the Sith homeworld without a problem. What? I know Rey is a gifted mechanic and I know she is a good pilot. Even she would not have been able to make that happen. Like, it's a cute fan service moment, but ultimately it's meaningless. Okay, so the climactic scene before the big aerial battle with like the Star Destroyers and the Final Order and the Rebellion, it's all leading up to this. Are you very excited? Because Poe is about to make his big Captain America speech. And you know what? While I can't buy Red 5 ever flying again in this lifetime, Poe gives a hell of a speech, I'll give him that. Inspiring the people, and people will follow us if we lead them. You know, they make you think you're alone, that's how they win and all that. Like, we're not alone, there's people out in the galaxy who still believe. Save the rebellion, save the dream, like all that. Like, it's good, it's good. That speech was good. Oscar Isaac sells it, it works. This part works. Okay, I got another dumb one. So, you know, that part on Exegol, they're going through, like, to get to the throne room, to get to Palps, to kill him. You know all those giant statues, like, floor to ceiling of, like, the Sith in, like, robes? I'm assuming it's Palpatine, I could be wrong. It's like an ancient Sith homeworld, so I'm running on the assumption, and I think we're meant to run on the assumption, not overthink this, but I thought of it after and it was funny, that these are just, like, the Sith that have come before. Much like if it were a Jedi temple, there would be statues of Jedi that have come before, and it's just like a placeholder Sith that's just kind of looming over the new Sith recruits or acolytes or whatever. But like, imagine for a second those are giant statues of Palpatine. Did he commission those himself? Or like, did the acolytes just say, you know, our Lord Emperor, we have made you these as a monument to your power? Like, either way it's funny, but like, I'm honestly curious. Like, if those are statues of Palpatine and not just placeholder Sith statues, whose idea was it? I'm curious. Also, the fight between Rey and Palpatine, and like Rey and Ben and Palpatine for like a hot second before Ben goes down the hole. You know those raised stands up on the walls with like all of those dudes in robes like chanting and swaying back and forth and cheering on Palpatine, right? Are we meant to believe that those really are Sith acolytes, or like are they just hallucinations made up by Palpatine, like force projections? Like, are they really there or not? Because it's been months and I'm still not sure. Why does Palpatine need a cheer section? I know why, because he's that bitch. I get it. I still to this day don't know if those dudes were even real. and it's kind of weird. Because then the thing of it is, like, the end of the fight comes, the temple starts to fall apart and crumble, and all those guys fall with the stands. Like, do they disappear into dust with the death of Palpatine? Were they ever there at all? Is all of this rubble falling and they're actual people, like, crumbling and falling to their deaths, like, in the rubble, in the wreckage, like, of the temple? Like, how many dozens, if not hundreds, of Sith acolytes did Rey just kill by killing Palpatine? I mean, they were Sith people, but they were still people. Or she killed force projections of Palpatine, which is equally bad, but in a different way, because it's just dumb. Let one other person have had that thought, please. Jeannie, are you with me on this at least? Is my fur child at least with me on this point? Because it still makes no sense. It doesn't make sense. J.J. Abrams is a bad writer. You remember a while back when I was revamping my channel and I said I wanted it to be about positivity? Whoops. Okay, we're getting to the end of this list. I promise we're almost done. So this, again, my second viewing of the movie was before it eventually came out that Palpatine was a clone. But at the time when I wrote this, I was like, I still don't understand how Palpatine is alive, and here's why. Because the original Palpatine being alive would have to mean, after Return of the Jedi, after he's thrown down, like, the shaft of a power core in the Death Star, he didn't die. Okay, fine, whatever. And then the Death Star blew up. So I originally come out of this movie because I had forgotten about Return of the Jedi. I hadn't seen it in years, so I'm like, okay, somehow hand-wavium, somehow he got away, you know, before the Death Star exploded, whatever. But no, then I went back and I watched Return of the Jedi for the first time in forever, and I realized, I'm like, no, there should be pieces of this guy in 3 different systems, because he was in the middle of the power core shaft after having been thrown down it, much like he throws Ben down the hole. He should have been in pieces anyway before the Death Star exploded, but then the Death Star exploded, so he should be super dead. And then it comes out after the fact that he's a clone, to which I say, why the fuck would Palpatine make a clone of himself that is arguably more busted than the guy that went down the hole to begin with? And why? Why did he have all of these clone fail-safes in the first place? Did he have some kind of force vision, like foretelling his death? He saw that Vader was going to throw him down the hole? Because if that's the case, if he knew that Vader was going to throw him down the hole, why didn't he do anything more to stop it? Like, he made clones of himself, but that's the only failsafe he put in place? That's why I don't buy him being a clone. Either way, it doesn't add up. Okay, last point. I promise, this is my last bullet. So, let the hate flow through you is Sheev Palpatine's only tactic for seducing lightsiders, and to that I ask, why? Why? Why is this the only tactic you employ, Sheev? You managed to get an entire republic on your side to willingly vote you into power as like the supreme ruler of everything, but with Anakin, with Luke, and now with Rey, and Ben, you just decide to keep saying, let the hate flow through you. Like, I don't understand. You're like the most evil guy in the galaxy, and you can't think of anything better than let the hate flow through you, strike me down with all of your anger and hatred. That's all you've got? You're like Harry Potter with his 2 spells. You've got 2 sentences, and if you say them both and they still somehow don't work, well, we'll get them next time, I guess. But we won't, because this is the end of this trilogy, and it's sad that this was the end. This is the thing I don't understand either, is that J.J. Abrams wrote and directed The Force Awakens. No? You know, some of that mystery box shit that he's famous for was in The Force Awakens, and it didn't make a lot of sense there, but it's the beginning of a trilogy. You want the mystery, you want something to, like, keep your focus and be like, oh, we'll find out about this later, we'll build to it, it's good. It wasn't satisfying, it wasn't compelling, like, that as much as I loved The Force Awakens, and as much as I loved The Last Jedi, and as much as some of the moments in The Rise of Skywalker were cool, in the end, am I gonna go back and watch it again? Probably not. A friend of mine was saying, like, you know why everybody's so dissatisfied? It's because people don't like endings. It's the same reason people were so pissed about Game of Thrones. And I'm like, no. I mean, yes and no. Like, people don't like for things to end. And you know what? That's a fact of growing up, is you have to accept that, yes, things end, especially your favorite series. Eventually, you'll have to accept that, yeah, it's over. But the thing about this is that much like with Game of Thrones, it didn't have to end this way. It could have ended in a way that was consistent with the movies that came before it, especially considering one of them was written and directed by the same guy. It could have provided a better closure to these characters' arcs. It could have given entire groups of people much better representation than it did, instead of this token shit that we got, which was complete bull. And it could have been satisfying, but it wasn't. With this, we just got a bunch of stuff that we've already seen in other Star Wars movies because we've seen them in other Star Wars movies, a bunch of fan service that is ultimately hollow, and a bunch of relationships that are also ultimately hollow. And some characters were essentially written out of this movie altogether. I wanted to like this movie. I was so excited. I was thinking, because here's the thing, like I said, I was a month late seeing this movie. After it came out and I was hearing all this stuff about it, I was thinking, oh come on, people said all that shit about The Last Jedi and then they turned out to be wrong, so maybe they're wrong again this time. But it is. It's true. I was so invested in these characters and I was so invested in this world. We all were. And ultimately, it was for nothing. All we've done, all this time, it ended up being for nothing. So thank you for that. And again, that same friend of mine that was like, nobody likes endings, they were telling me, you know, Star Wars has always been dumb. Star Wars has always been goofy. And I'm like, yeah, it has. It's dudes fighting each other with laser swords in space. Like, I get it. It's dumb. But like, it didn't have to be this dumb. And it was. And that's bullshit. And I'm not happy about it. And I sat on all these thoughts for 4 months. I really, really, really needed to get this shit off my chest. And it is, oh my god, it's hot in here. I'm hot and angry. Mostly hot because the windows are closed so that I didn't have any sound interference, but now the radiators are on and it's boiling in here. So I think it's time to wrap this video up. And if you liked it, you can give me a thumbs up down below. You can comment and let me know what you thought. Let me know if I was just screaming into a void for no reason, or if you related to any part of this. And if you liked this video enough to subscribe, please do. I am uploading more in quarantine because I have the time to now. But in the meantime, I think, yeah, I'm not gonna go watch The Rise of Skywalker. I'm probably just gonna go and rewatch The Mandalorian again until season 2 comes out. And until next time, I have been Miranda. This has been The Weekly Fangirl. I thank you guys for watching. I thank you for putting up with all of my screaming, and I will see you next time. Bye, guys.